My name is René Creutzburg. I was born July 16, 1931 in the city of Pematang Siantar, that is North Sumatra. At that time it was still the Dutch East Indies. My parents' names, my mother is Christina Lydia Rader, Rahder, and my father was Wilhelm David. And when the malaise, the crisis broke out in the 1930s, in the beginning of the 1930s, he lost his job, and we went back to the island of Java, where I finally grew up, first in the city of Lawang, that is close on the mountain of Arjuna, and there is where Lawang means actually door, that is the opening to the mountains. That was Lawang. Anyhow, there we grew up. My father passed away in 1936, and that's how I was then taken care of by my grandparents. When the war broke out, I got problems with malaria. That is a tropical sickness caused by mosquitoes. Anyhow, it became so bad that I was okay for 2 weeks, and then again I was 2 weeks. I had the shivers. I was cold. I had a high fever, and so my grandma finally said to my mother, "Sorry, but I'm getting too old for this kind of stuff. So here is your son back." So that's how I got back to my mom. And then my mom, in the meantime, had remarried. Her mother-in-law knew something about medication, and she told my mom to make a tea from some kind of the bark of a certain tree, and she had to cook it from 2 cups of water until it was only 1. Then I had to drink it on an empty stomach early in the morning, every cotton picking day. And that was quite a chore. But what became worse, because after that I got cured from the malaria, that's true, but the problem was that my, I don't know the proper word for it, my blood was not good. I had more red or white blood body, so I had to eat every day. I had to eat liver. Either it was fried, or it was cooked, or it was whatever, but every day I had to eat liver. Well, in a way, I am happy that it was taken care of, everything, because I became rather healthy, and I'm still healthy at my age now. Anyhow, and I grew up during the Japanese occupation, when there was, for 4 years, there was no school, and we couldn't take it as a vacation because the Japanese people did not like to have these young kids running the streets. So we had to work. I worked in a plant, where they make, where they manufacture textile, and we were paid only 8 cents a day, but that was not so bad because we got food, and that was the main reason we worked there. And we didn't finish our meal, but we brought it home for the rest of the family, that they could have something to eat too. Because in those days it was without any income. It was very difficult to make ends meet. Anyhow, the war was over, and I went back to school, And thanks to the war, in a way, I was allowed to go after my elementary school to go to the high school. In the olden days, high school was only for rich people. The HBS was only for people who could afford it. But after the war, it was free. There were no books, but everything was made in stencils. But that was okay because we had to learn anyway. And that's how in my education, I was lucky that I could finish my high school and got my high school diploma. And so, because I knew that afterwards, after school, there was no money to go to the university anyway, so therefore I chose the language department as the section, so that I was I was educated in 5 languages. It was just Dutch, English, German, French, and in Indonesian. Then also in bookkeeping, and because that was, like I said, there was no way that I could go to the university. I had to work right away after school, and that's what I did. So I started working for the KPM, and that was a Royal Dutch company, shipping company that had ships going between the islands from Indonesia, and by that time it was already Indonesia, and Indonesia counts 3,000 islands. Only 1,700 are populated, but nevertheless all these islands need something, so that's what the ships went back and forth. I've got involved in a lot of sports. I used athletic. My specialties were the 100 and 200 meter dash, and I never became the champion of Surabaya because there were always people faster than I. But I was fast enough that when they had intercity competitions, that I was sent out to the part of the people that got sent out to compete in those other cities. So I saw, in that way, I saw quite a bit of the island of Java. So that was that, and then, but the political situation became a little bit difficult because the labor unions became stronger and stronger there, and so it was hard to reason with them. I was loaned to a coal mine in Borneo, Kalimantan, they said. Anyway, and there somehow the labor union learned that the people in the Netherlands working in coal mines, they had special shoes with a metal nose. So they demanded that for all the people in Indonesia in the coal mine, that they had the same kind of shoes, and otherwise they would go on strike. You know. Well, anyhow, so you had no choice; you had to give in. But what happened to all those beautiful shoes? That the people who are usually working barefooted, all of a sudden they had to wear shoes. They didn't like that. So what did they do? They sold all those shoes to the Chinese trade people who were there. Another thing was, of course, also that they didn't like it that they had to, when they had to talk, they had to talk with me also, and they thought that was they didn't like it. They had the old colonial feelings. They would rather talk with the Dutch people, the real Dutch people, like they said, than with me and then Indo. Because I was supposed to be one of them, and here I was not one of them, but again, one, as they felt it, against them, because I had to represent the Dutch company who owned that coal mine. Anyhow, so that made me decide to slowly but surely to follow the big stream of people going to Holland because they couldn't hack it anymore in Indonesia. They lost their jobs, they lost this, they lost that, and this the treatment of the Indonesians was below civilized behavior. The young people, that is to say. And that's how I went to date. In 1954, I was how can I say it? I had enough money saved to pay for my trip for my tour to Indonesia, to the Netherlands, and that is when I turned in my resignation, and that's how I left Indonesia. Okay. Well, anyway, when I made the decision to go, I was, like I said, mentioned before, I was in Borneo, and so my stepfather took care of everything, and he took care of my boat ticket to the Netherlands and so on. But the boats to the Netherlands leave from the island of Java. They don't go from Borneo, so I had to go back home. And when I went back home into Surabaya, that's where I met an old school, we call it a flame, a school sweetheart, and I had other sweethearts in the meantime, and she had other sweethearts also in the meantime, because and so anyhow, when we met each other, it started all over again. And my mother and her mother were good friends, and they were so happy, and that their children were getting together. Oh my goodness! Now we will become family. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so my mother asked me point blank, "What are your plans with Ruth?" Her name is Ruth, Ruth. And I said, "Well, she's my friend." She said, "Don't you get married?" I said, "No, because after all, I have no job. I stopped working. I'm going to the Netherlands. I've never been there. I don't know what is waiting for me in my future, and I'm going to that country with a responsibility of a wife. No kidding. And I'm not doing that." And my mother said, "You better, because her mother and I are best friends, and I want you to marry her." I said, "No, Mom." And she said, "Yes, you better." And without me knowing, she officially she went with my stepfather. She went to meet the parents of my wife, and they asked for the hand of their daughter for me. Oh. So that's why I keep telling my children it was some kind of a shotgun wedding. I was, well, anyway, my mother said, no. You're going to Holland all by yourself, number one. Number two, and then as a bachelor, no way. All those Dutch girls have a reputation of being very willing and able. So, no. You're getting married before you go. So, and that my boat was leaving on the 31st of January, 55, And I got married on the 21st of January. And so that's how I ended up in Holland. Being in Surabaya, which is a harbor city, we were also under the rules from the Japanese Navy, and it was all known that the Navy was not that strict and not that mean like the Army. So the Japanese occupation was strict, yes, but not as mean as it was on the inlands. We could survive because we could sell. My mother could sell clothes, all our clothes, one by one, just to buy food. Secondly, like I mentioned before, I worked in a plant where we make textile, and that's where I brought home also food. And later on, we also became black market tradespeople. I brought we sold to the Japanese prostitutes a lot of stuff because they were the best customers. They were willing to pay a lot, while other people had difficulty to buy things, and so. And we were little kids, little boys. In those days, I was about 13, 14 years old. So they didn't mind. We could do a lot of this tukang catut noemen wij that was that. Like I mentioned that before, we were, as long as we behaved ourselves, we were left alone. The capitulation of the Japanese was, of course, although we were hoping for it, was still a surprise. I worked on, volunteered for the Red Cross to be at the railroad stations when the trains came in with all the people who came out of the internment camps from the Japanese. I myself, because of my offspring, because of my foreparents, I didn't have to go in because I had 50% Indonesian blood, like he said. They determined it, not me. Anyhow, so that's why I stayed outside of the Japanese camps. But then, when the Dutch tried to come back to Indonesia as their colony, the Indonesian people resented that because they were promised independence by the Japanese, and that's what they were fighting for a long time already. And so the Japanese capitulated around 15th of August, but there was nobody to take it over. The English people didn't land until a week afterwards. So in that vacuum of power, they declared their own independence unilaterally on the 17th of August. And from then on, they were fighting for their independence, and a lot of young people, teenagers also, they became fanatics, especially because they could do a lot of bad things without being punished for it. Nobody was in authority there, and so that is what we call the time came, what they call the Bersiap period, and that was a very dangerous part, because anybody who's looked like a Dutch person, behaved like a Dutch person, that was right away, that person was an enemy. And so we rather had to stay home and don't come outside. And when the English people came in, it was bad news, because they had expected a kind of a peaceful takeover, but they did not expect the Japanese people to be trying to fight for their independence. So they killed left and right, and like I said, they could do it without being punished, so they became very extreme. And that's why one of the nicknames we gave them was also the extremist. And luckily, that after the bad fighting broke out between the English and the Indonesian people, the Indonesian government decided that it would be better to take away all those Indos and keep them as hostages. And so we were driven out of our houses, and we had to walk a long distance to an old Japanese camp, and which was used for the Dutch women, but now it was used for us, and that's how we ended up in what we called a Bersiap camp. And it was, like they said, it was for our own protection. And of course, we didn't believe it, but in a way they were right. Because if we had stayed home, with all those extremists around us, and we were not safe at all. And that's how I ended up in the Bersiap camp since October 1945 until August 1946. In that camp, we were treated normally. We were guarded by Indonesian soldiers from the regular army, and that was the best thing that could happen to us. That they were not fanatics, and of course that we didn't. When you lose your freedom, you lose your freedom. You cannot go anywhere. You just sit and don't do anything, and and you hope that there will be enough food. We got not abundant of food, but it was enough to survive. And later on, in the end of 46, the WWII came, and so we were we were freed, and we could go. They transported us back home. WWII was refugees, allied, prisoners of war, something. I don't know. It was I forgot but it was the WWII. It was actually was an international thing.
Okay.
It was English, primarily English, but the Red Cross was involved, and so but they arranged everything. We were still all together because my mother and my sisters and my younger brother and we were together because we were still little kids, and then we were, of course, they made after older than 15 years, had to go to a men's camp. But we were still not 15 at that time. That had how to keep us together. Yeah. When the beginning of the Bersiap time, for somehow I was on the street and I heard a lot of yelling and people running, and there were just these young people running with machetes after somebody. I don't know who he was, but he tried to jump over a ditch, but he misjudged it and he fell in the ditch, and that was the end of that. And I saw those guys just hacking in him, but that was on a distance. Mm-hmm. It was scary, but I was far enough not to be involved at all. Okay. After we came back from the Bersiap camp we found our own house still empty, so we could go in our own house. And when I say empty, it was really empty. It was plundered, but at least nobody else lived there. I like to become an example and some kind of an behind the curtains power to make the Indos independent, persistent, and also united. Especially that united is a very difficult situation, and that's what I don't. Sometimes I feel that I'm at a complete loss there. I keep telling the people, we are one family. No matter what, if you dig long and deep enough, you'll find out that you have the same four parents. And that is this. I feel that as one of my duties in life. Till now, and my successes are that much that in spite of all the criticism and all the cynicism, I'm still existing after 50 years. Partying and eating and gossiping.
There you go. Thank you.